And welcome everybody to day number 3. And this is all about networking and outreach and getting your new credentials, which we talked about last night, in front of as many of the right people as possible. Apologies if there's some noise in the background. Is anybody hearing anything?
No.
No, okay, that means my headset is doing its job. So power moves network smarter and land faster. Despite all appearances otherwise, networking is the fastest, even though it appears slow, way to get the type of position that you're looking for. And we'll get into great detail on that here in this discussion here tonight. So, review of day 2, accomplishments. And I know it may have been easy, may have been difficult, whatever. And Lauren, I know we haven't gone through this together yet because you haven't seen day 2, but if either of the three of you want to speak to what it was like to put those accomplishments together. I was saying 2 or 3 of them. What was your final output? Not
I'm
all
not,
at
I'm
once.
not I'm not volunteering because I just really I I didn't feel like I had any concrete kind of factual, I've been a great employee, I've worked hard, I've done well at what I've done, but I can't say that, you know, this student got a job because I taught them, the best English they could for so I did think about it.
Okay. What other positions did you have contributions and accomplishments in that I absolutely guarantee you're selling yourself short?
I mean, my last job at the store, same thing. I mean, I think I did a great job. I learned customers' names just like I would learn my students' names. And so if you walked into that store, I would greet you by name. And I developed a rapport with, just about everybody who shopped there.
Okay. I hear you. But there were, and again, this is for a longer conversation than here, but I'm 100% sure that there are way more things underneath the surface that you're either not acknowledging yourself for or not allowing yourself to put into the quote unquote quantifiable accomplishment category. And you're not alone.
Quantifiable.
You're
That's the word, quantifiable.
understood. And you're not alone, by the way. And I'd say probably about 40% of the people I work with really struggle with what we're talking about yesterday. And um, the most egregious example that I've ever encountered, and he had dozens of quantifiable accomplishments, was my own son. I couldn't pull those out of him for anything when we worked on his resume about 3 years ago. And he did find another position now. He was finally able to get it a little bit. Separate story on him, which I'll get into at another point. Scott or Imani?
Uh, sure, I'll go. It's sort of a toss up between my book authorship, which was really 10 years in the making, as well as my teaching career, which I was in for over 20 years.
Okay.
So, being an accomplished author, being published and getting on the media, that was a great honor to my father, who I wrote my book about. So I consider that quite an accomplishment, knowing I was working full time while I was doing all the writing.
Hmm.
And every time I had time off from teaching, whether it was summer vacation, Easter, or Christmas break, I was traveling across the country doing research and interviewing World War II veterans. So I think that was quite a feat. I think I should have earned a master's degree for all the research and legwork I did in writing that book. But it went hand in hand with teaching because my teaching skills played a big role in the
Okay.
research and the travel and pulling it all together.
There are many layers underneath everything you just said. Okay.
Right.
So it may be, and I'm making this up, interviewed 225 World War II veterans
Hmm.
as I'm completely making it up
Yeah.
to substantiate 3 chapters of published book, sold
Right.
X thousand copies of said book, had certain number of interviews on various TV shows or blogs or podcasts or TED Talks, whatever it might be. All of
Right.
that is in the quantifiable accomplishment range. Okay. And it's probably 95% of the people that I've worked with either undersell, understate, or don't acknowledge themselves for the contributions they've made. There's another probably 2 or 3% that get it right. And then there's another couple of percent that way overstate it, but they're rare. They're not very common. They will overstate what they've done, and really give you the idea that, they're the best thing since sliced bread. But the majority of people really struggle with this exercise. And I'm gonna, this is a little bit of a self-serving comment, but that's where I come in. That I'll pull it out of you like a bad tooth. Okay. And it's actually a good tooth in this case. Okay. So
Right.
the whole idea is to make sure that you didn't just show up, breathe oxygen, use the bathroom, and eat lunch. Okay.
Right. Right.
And I know none of you have. It's just a matter of how do you position the activities that you did and turn them into relevant contributions, value-added accomplishments, etc. Okay, so I'll leave this for now. I can see. Oh, Imani, I forgot you. Go ahead.
I really don't have too much to say. I think, like you said, like I know we all have like accomplishments that we might have did and like not acknowledged, but
Mhm.
I don't feel like there's really too much I could say. I did want to point a time I had a wig business and I made wigs from a sewing machine from scratch.
Okay.
So I had a bit of experience like setting up my own website, running things on my own. But then I want to say I like a year went by and I probably didn't give it as much time as I could have gave it. I did have like a pretty good amount of customers, but I no longer enjoyed it. So
Okay.
I mean, I guess I can say the accomplishment with that was just experiencing running something on my own and like building my website and so that's about it, I guess I could say.
Okay. So you just said one thing that's very important. I had a good amount of customers. Okay. Since I was never one of them, how many did you have? And how much did you
Um,
sell the wigs for? And what kind of profit margins did you make? Okay, these are all really relevant things.
yeah.
Okay, so again, like Scott, there are several layers into that, just that one aspect of your professional background. And there are other things that go along with this. It doesn't all have to be professional. I have probably 2+ inches at the bottom of my resume that are really more personal or outside of quote unquote what a resume would normally include. And they include things like, Doris and I know each other from a choral group. We sang a cappella for, I did 15 years. Doris is still, well, not now. I guess you're in Florida, but I wrote that in as being something that I did as a hobby. I played sports for a number of years, competitive sports, in a men's league until COVID kicked in. So there were several things that I wrote in about that because I'm interested in letting people know some of the accomplishments I've had. I got nominated and selected to be in my high school Hall of Fame back in 2013. So that's in there. I wrote a couple of books, so that's in there. So the thing is, it doesn't all have to be work related. Okay. So if you had, if you ran track in high school and you were all conference, I'm making it up. There are things like that. And you may only put a couple of words in about it, but it does give people an idea of what it is that you're all about. Probably 7, 8 years ago, I was working with a guy who was finance and accounting straight out of college all through his career. And we went through and candidly, doing his resume was kind of boring, okay, because there were a lot of situations where he was not quantifiable in terms of how he added value. And I'll get into that here in a second. But he was a seventh degree black belt in some martial art that I had never heard of. And I said to him, John, you got to put this on we got to put this on your resume. He says, why? I said, it took you how long to get to be a seventh degree black belt? Almost 30 years. Okay. So that shows your discipline, that shows your athletic ability, and it shows your desire to progress in a discipline that most people would have no idea. As God is my witness, the second interview he had after we put that on his resume, the interviewer's son was 12 years old and had some other color belt besides black. They spent 15 minutes talking about their experiences in that, and he got the job. Okay, so it isn't necessarily all about what you've done professionally. A lot of it is, but there are other parts of it that go into the volunteer hobbies, certifications, and all that kind of stuff that's at the bottom of your resume. All right. And Lauren, this applies for you as well.
Hang on. So you asked her a bunch of questions. You need to give her a chance to answer them.
I will go ahead.
So I only had probably about 15. But those 15 were loyal customers, and my wigs, they went for about ranging from 150 to 300. I don't know. I don't know if you guys wear extensions, but they're pretty expensive. So and they were handcrafted. So
Hmm.
I took the webs of the bundles and sewed them into a cap, and from completely hand, not manufactured, and completed it by hand. When it gets into like the numbers and stuff like that, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't I was selling them, but you know how like you have a hobby but you're not really looking at it as like a business
Hmm.
standpoint. Like I had a website and everything, but it was just like making money. Like I didn't think like, okay, like um this is how much I have this, I'm gonna invest this into my business so that I can have that to like grow it. I didn't have that mentality at the time. It was kind of just like, okay, like, oh, do you want to buy a wig? And then took their money, took probably so let's just say for instance, if the wig was originally like the inventory was like 300, I would have to maybe charge them a little bit more just so I can get the wig and still make a profit out of it, maybe like $100, $50, and then that was just mine, and I just kind of, that was it. So
Okay,
yeah.
but you may not have quote unquote formalized it as much as you think you could have, but you've got a really good start. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a really good start, and it was all on your own. I mean, it wasn't like you were, had a boss leaning over your shoulder saying you need to do this, you need to do this. All of this came out of your own creativity, and people were spending several $100s on it. So
Yeah.
there's a lot to be said for that, not just from an entrepreneurship standpoint, but from an ability to fill a customer need.
Yeah, and I actually would like to share. I'm not, I don't do it anymore, but here was one of them. So yeah, that was my hobby once upon a time, but it's not anymore, and I'm looking to something else. But yeah, so I guess it's something I'm proud of and I accomplished. So
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, like I said, I'm not in your target audience, but that looks pretty good to me.
yeah.
If you can sell it for $300, God bless you. I mean, that's great. That's
Yeah.
really that's something good. Okay. So, all right, I'm going to move on from accomplishments because accomplishments are effectively the building blocks of a resume. All right. And the resume is the whole story about you as a professional person with some human being stuff integrated into it. LinkedIn is even more than that. LinkedIn allows you to put some personalized pieces of yourself in the about section, and there's a whole bunch of other places that you can do the same thing. And the goal is to get people to notice you, because people hire people despite all the resumes and applications that go through bots, and all of this stuff is a mess. I was on a call today with somebody who sent out probably 200 applications in the last 6 months, and he's a senior level cybersecurity director at a major company. He got nothing. And he was playing with one hand behind his back because number one, his resume didn't speak to his accomplishments that well. And number two, the response rate when you fill out applications and go through the applicant tracking systems is somewhere between 0.5% and 2%. So you're talking 1 out of 50 to 1 out of 200 to get a real response. And this does not count. Hey, we received your application. Thanks for sending. A real response is somebody either in human resources or a recruiter or a hiring manager that says, hey, we got your information. We don't have an open position for you right now that aligns with your something that says, but we're keeping your resume on file, and there's a name attached to it, and there's a contact that goes along with it. We're going to go into that in great detail here in the next several minutes. Okay, so creating an outreach strategy is all about who is your target and how do you reach them. The approach, there are several online databases, LinkedIn profile searches that you can do, especially if you use LinkedIn Premium, and networking for advice, which is the most powerful way to get yourself in front of people. And I'll have a couple of stories about that when we get there. And another key about this is getting organized, because if you have, I'm making this up, 50, 100, 200 different balls in the air in terms of people that you're speaking with or company representatives that you've introduced yourself to. If you don't keep yourself organized either electronically or in a notebook, your life's going to be miserable. All right. So that's another important part of this. I'm going to speak to it here, but just talk and leave it alone for that. But being organized is really important. And there are apps and other software that you can use for that as well. Okay, so to use my baseball analogy again, we are going from first base to second base here tonight with outreach and networking. Just to give you a point of reference, and this is somewhat of a dated document, but the percentages are still the same. So what do 7 billion people in the world do? And I circled in red 400 million entrepreneurs and 1.7 billion work in services. That's really what we're talking about here. It's just probably it's a little over 30% of the total population. You see industrial jobs, agriculture, people over 65, some unemployed, and then almost 2 billion that are too young to work. Now we now have 8 billion people in the world. So this is, again, a little bit dated, but the percentages are what I wanted you to look at. And I hope you can see this because I find this to be one of the most effective charts I've ever found on the internet. It speaks to the skill sets and the abilities of people in different generations. Okay, now we haven't yet added Gen Z to this, but here we go. Executive presence, baby boomers off the scale. Tech savviness, baby boomers pulling up the rear. And tech savviness, obviously, with millennials, a lot higher than that. Generating revenue, Gen X, much, much better. Although I would say that baby boomers can still do the same if they put their minds to it. Cost effectiveness, et cetera. So age breakdowns aren't always relevant, but skill breakdowns are. And then they happen to be, in this case, by age. And this is something I can spend a little more time on, but I want to get to the other stuff that's in here as well. So the marketing and sales of your outreach program, it's really like this. The marketing is all the things you do to put your value proposition together, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, cover letters, any quote unquote branding related to you. The beginning of the sales process starts now. How do you get your credentials in front of as many of the right people as possible? And I'm highlighting each one of these as being hiring managers, recruiters, networking groups, et cetera, and those already in your network. Is the position you're looking for in the right geography or remote? And why are the roles you're looking for a good fit? And if you've done the marketing part of this exercise well, these are easy questions to answer. As far as allocating time for job search, there was an article that came out in 2017. They tracked the time usage for 147 respondents in 10-minute intervals over an entire week, including sleep. What they found was that the average time spent on job search was less than an hour and a half a day. There were several reasons for that. Some people were burned out. They just didn't want to be dealing with it. They had other issues in life that they had been working so hard for, they didn't have time to take care of. And other people just didn't know what to be doing with their time. So one of the reasons for this presentation here tonight is so that when you're in outreach phase, which can feel like, what do I do next? You get up in the morning and you know what you need to do next. All right, there's no secret about it. It's pretty straightforward. And some of the reasons were just, there's a whole lot of emotional ups and downs that go along with being in transition. So proper time allocation looks like this. Realize, and this has been going on for decades, that only 20 or 25% of jobs are found with posted ads. It used to be every Sunday, the New York Times, the Star Ledger, and all the major newspapers would have sections of the paper that were this thick with jobs advertised. And the fastest person to type up their cover letter to go along with their resume and put it in the mail, and so I'm going back 30, 40 years now. This is before the internet, this is before email and everything else. That's what would happen. Now you can see hundreds of posted jobs on any job board at any time of day or night. And they're like Grand Central Station at rush hour. Hiring companies are swamped mostly with irrelevant resumes. And again, 0.5% to 1% response rate. I've seen as high as 2 if you're in a web developer or an IT type of role. It's like buying a lottery ticket. Recruiters handle 5 to 10% of the placements. So the other 70 and 80% are due to the networking capabilities of the hiring manager or company, the candidates, and then intermediaries or advocates. And we'll talk about what that means shortly. So the goal is to spend 70 to 80% of your time in outreach and networking that's going to be person to person or person through a person to get you in front of somebody. Reaching out to people directly on LinkedIn. Hey, Doris, I see your background is in this. It's similar to mine. I would love to be a part of your LinkedIn network. All right. There are various ways to to introduce yourselves to people in a non-threatening way. Develop clear target lists, reach out to former associates, and we're talking former colleagues, bosses, vendors, clients even, or others who may have been involved in whatever job you were doing. If you've been in education for a while, that can be difficult in terms of former associates, because if you want to move on, Lauren, and I'm directly speaking to you, if you want to move out of education, the people who are in it are probably not going to be as much help as they could be. That said, you don't know who people know. And asking for advice, which I'm going to show you how to do here in a few minutes, is a very, very, very productive way to move your job search forward. There are several online databases. I have a New Jersey library card still. They don't know that I've moved out of New Jersey several years ago. JerseyClicks.org has 17 million companies in it. There's another database, online database called ONET. And it is really, really good because the Dun & Bradstreet has Dun & Bradstreet and Moody's summaries for credit reports and rankings and all that kind of stuff. And ChatGPT is also really good. If you say to ChatGPT, and give me a list of all the manufacturing companies within 30 miles of Princeton, New Jersey, you're going to get an exhaustive list, which is what JerseyClicks does too. ChatGPT goes at it from a different angle. And you can have them filtered by industry, geography, and size. I'm going to speak to you about a target summary sheet, which is a really valuable tool. As long as your resume is done right, the target summary sheet is also something that you can use in order to get people interested in what it is that you're doing and how they can provide you with advice. So it's the function. It talks about the functional area of expertise that you have, the level or title you're looking for, geography, different industries, and specific companies, if you want to say that. It's great to use this, and I'm going to show you the format of this, and I use this all the time with clients. So here, this is a live version of one that I did with a client. I took out the specific companies, but he wanted to be in a business development, program management, media relations, public relations, had experience in all of these. In these kind of industries, he's particularly wanted to be in government and nonprofit, but he also had background in technology and financial services. And this was the level or title that he felt he could go in at. Further down here is, and I don't have it on here just because it doesn't fit on PowerPoint nearly as well, geography and then other concerns. There are people that I asked to put in there, hey, high school age children, don't want to move for 4 years. And if you put that in this summary, which you're only going to be delivering to the people you network with, this is not something that's going to go to a hiring manager or a recruiter. But when you put specific companies and organizations in here, it says, oh, I know somebody who works for that group. I know somebody who used to work for that company. I know people who are in this industry. I know who people are part of this networking group or this industry association or whatever. And here's how you go about getting your outreach list together. And this will be your homework, one of your homework pieces for tonight. Start with 10 to 25 people who you think can help with your job search. And again, bosses, colleagues, vendors, customers, committee members, people you know from volunteer work, and you know them well enough so that you can understand what their professional capabilities are, and others who may be able to provide relevant advice and introductions. When I'm working with a recent college graduate, I'll say, friends of your parents are very viable connections for networking, okay? Or parents of your friends, if they happen to be in industries that you want to be in. So these are other areas where you can find people, alumni associations, other officers in different organizations, family and friends, neighbors, social acquaintances, members of church, temple, or mosque groups, doctor, dentist, lawyer, and accountant. You can easily come up with, even if you don't think you know that many people, 100, 200, 500 people. I happen to have in my phone about 4,300 people. Now, not all of them would fall into the category of, if I were looking for a position, would I reach out to them? But there are a whole lot of people in here that, as long as I go through the list strategically and intelligently, it will provide a lot of value to what I'm looking to do going forward. So here is the magic approach. Okay. And Scott, I'm going to use you as the person that I've known for a long time. Hello,
Okay.
Scott. Hello, Scott. You and I have known each other for a long time, and I've always respected your opinions and perspective. I would love to hear your advice about a number of career options I'm considering. Would you have time for coffee or a Zoom call this week?
Sure.
Okay, here is the difference. And this is the way you want to do it. And the way you don't want to do it, I'm going to verbalize, but I'm not going to put it in writing. Hey, Scott, you and I have known each other for a long time. I happen to be in transition. I got laid off. I'm wondering if you could help me with a job search. Okay. If you ask for help, people get stuck. People are like, "Oh, I don't know how to help this guy. Well, I don't know what to do." If you ask for advice, two things happen. Number one, you put them on a pedestal. And number two, you say, well, sure, I have some advice. I have an opinion. I know people. You're in a position of receiving the information you want without asking for help, even though that's what you're getting. Okay.
Mm,
And I rehearse this with clients all the time. I want to see somebody say this to me like it rolls off their tongue. You got somebody on the phone and it's like you're having a conversation about the weather, but you're asking about advice for your career options. Okay. So this is something that I found out about in 2016 and I work with every client on this and it really opens up doors in ways you wouldn't imagine.
mm,
Overcoming networking obstacles. The first one is attitude. And there's a slide that I have in a later presentation, I think day 5, that says a bad attitude is like a flat tire. You can't go anywhere until you change it. Okay. Everybody that's on this call right now has a good attitude, which is a great thing. There are ups and downs in job search, and you can't help it sometimes to get a little bit discouraged, a little bit annoyed, a little bit worried. All that kind of stuff comes along for the ride. But if you're positive about what the outcome is going to be, you're going to get there much more quickly. The second obstacle is pre-qualifying people in your network. One thing about others that you think you know well is that you do not know who they know. So if I'm making this up, Scott, if I'm looking for a history teacher position in a school district that's within 25 miles of me, and
right.
you don't know the person may know somebody on the school board in a certain town, or may know
Right.
the principal at a certain school. You just don't know until you ask.
Right. Right.
But if you're asking for advice, you're not going to intimidate people. Pride, not wanting to ask for support or advice. Dumbest of the whole bunch here. Pedestal for you or them. You may think that, wow, this guy's a CEO at this company. I can't speak to him or her. How do I do that? Well, all I know is, and this is a baseball coach used to say this, I don't care how good you think they are on the field, they put their pants on one leg at a time. Okay. And that's the same as relates to this. Everybody who's at a very high level didn't start there. Okay. They worked their way up or whatever. They know what it's like to be in the bottom or the middle of an organization, whatever it means. Discipline and organization. I already mentioned that before, but keep outreach at the front and center of your job search, and you will create a lot of momentum. You'll get a lot of balls in the air and you'll get some momentum that's going on. Some hesitation. What might be holding you back? Some people say, oh, I don't want to call him. I worked with him 10 years ago. I haven't reached out to him then, and now I'm looking for a job. What's that going to look like? Most people are really glad to hear from you, no matter what it is that you've been doing. Hey, what's been happening? Okay, so it is a good time to catch up no matter what, and it's a great time to ask for advice. Okay, now I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and what I was speaking for, in fact, I'm going to go back to the slide one more time. When I talk about networking and how to get, like, you basically circle the wagons to try to get to a hiring manager. The most people that I've ever heard anybody speak about in terms of number of contacts they had before they got to the hiring manager is 23. I was at a networking meeting in Princeton, the Mercer County networking group, and they were a holdover for something that had state funding for a long time, and then people have taken it over as a volunteer. And there are several around the state. I think there are 6 counties that still have them. And if you found a job or got a consulting project, your responsibility was to bring in donuts or some goodies for everybody else who was at the meeting. And then you would stand up and say, how did your process go? So I was presenting that day, and I happened to be sitting 2 seats away from a guy who stood up and said, I spoke with 23 people before I got to the hiring manager. There were 4 layers of people in one leg, and there were several others. By the time I got to the hiring manager, 4 people had already told him my name, and he hired me in 20 minutes. That is an absolutely exaggerated example, but I'll use one from my own experience. A person that I worked with at Shearing Plow Pharmaceuticals, she was one of the packaging managers, and she was the director of packaging at Novartis Consumer Health. And they were looking to somebody for somebody to come in and take some of these new product ideas and turn them into reality. So she said, "Hey, they're looking for somebody to do this." And I said, "Sure, I'm interested." Based on her recommendation, I had a 23-minute with the vice president of marketing for the entire division. I started the following Monday. I didn't speak with anybody else. Okay. And that assignment lasted for 9 months before they had some budget cutbacks and everything else. The bottom line is when you have an advocate in an organization and you are very proactive about networking your way into an organization, things will happen. Okay, so now I'm going to get with recruiters. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but there are contingency recruiters that are only paid when you get the position, and retained recruiters who are paid in 3 installments. They're paid when they start the agreement, they're paid when a few candidates are approved, and then they're paid when the search is completed, usually 60 days or 90 days after the person is hired. These are typically situations where 100, 200, 4, 500K is involved. And recruiters, it's like real estate. They make a lot of money on this, but it's not easy work. Once they've found the top 3 or 5 candidates, they're most of the way down the road because usually one of those candidates will get hired. Recruiter search process, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but they meet with the client to discuss what the position's all about. How are they going to find the different people? Now it's almost too easy. Recruiters use LinkedIn Super Premium. They call it something else. I don't know exactly what the name is. They spend a lot of money every month on it. They put keyword phrases in and say, find me people who fit. And if you have the right keyword phrases in your profile, you pop up. And then they'll look at your profile and say, do I want to speak with this person? And that's how the contact starts. So having a really good LinkedIn profile is like having a free website. So they'll check candidates, check references, present a slate of candidates, and then they'll participate in the negotiations. The last person that I worked with related to a search firm, he was making 225,000 as a senior director of logistics, manufacturing, and supply chain at a small food company in New Jersey. A recruiter found him, and he since got the job. It took about 6 weeks to get it all done. He just accepted the position, and he'll start the end of this month. He's now making over 300,000 with bonus potential up to 500K because he had the right keyword phrases in his LinkedIn profile. All right. So it's really important. And that's what I'm talking about. The marketing part of this, if you do that right, everything starts to go in the right direction. All right. So optimum results for a recruiter. When you're dealing with them, they can be your biggest pains in the butt because they'll ghost you often. They get so many people reaching out to them on a daily or weekly basis. They don't have time to respond to everything. Don't take it personally. Follow up often until they say stop or no. Until they say the position's filled or stop bothering me. It is okay to follow up with recruiters. They are used to it. Find out okay, this is one of the things that when you're working with a recruiter, again, they can be your biggest asset, biggest advocate. And talk about the salary range, the length of time the position's been open, any other details about the organization that you should know before you interview. Created opportunities. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that, but I've seen people do exactly what I'm going to say, and I'll just use one example. There was a company, this is about 8 years ago, and my colleague Henry and I were working with the same one client. They needed a person to run manufacturing, to run operations, and to run logistics. And they found a candidate that had all three. So, and they were going to pay 150K for each of those positions. The guy came into the interview and said, hey, look, why don't you pay me 200K and I'll hire a couple of people at 100K. I'll save you 50 grand and I'll save you the hassle of having to deal with 2 other people as direct reports. They took his recommendation. It's exactly what they did. So creating a position for yourself is easier than you might think, and it takes a little creativity to make that happen. Anytime you see news about a company that has promotions or a relocation or expansion, and my kids happen to live in Austin, Texas. There are 4 major companies, Apple, Tesla, and Google, or 3 of them. I think I forget the 4th one, that have majorly expanded and moved out of California and come into Austin. Okay, so when that happens, there's always new opportunities available because people are not going to always want to move along. Other things like new products, particularly in the pharmaceutical industry, if there's a product that's about to get FDA approval, there's a whole group of staffing, there's a whole staffing need that they're going to have based on that typically. And any product or industry trends, I mean, anything related to AI these days, you can't find enough people who have that experience. There are also opportunities with troubled products and industries, and if there are major price changes that happen, price of commodities like oil and gas or something like that, those can impact companies in terms of what their staffing needs are. Okay, I'm going to go quickly into this, but I've seen this work as well as intro emails. A letter, personal and confidential, directed to the person in the organization that you know can help you, or is a senior level enough person that you know that the letter will be forwarded. Nobody sends US mail anymore, or FedEx packages. It'll cost you like $7 or $8 to send something ground, but if you send that, somebody's going to deal with it. And this is a direct email that my colleague Henry developed many, many years ago, and I've seen clients use this. I had one client who was down in South Jersey on the shore, and she had a very tight geographical constraint. She had to be within 10 miles of a church group because she was an administrator and had to be available on a moment's notice. So we found out all the companies that were within 10 miles of that particular location, and she sent this letter to them over a 2-week period. She had 3 offers within a month. Okay, she was a senior admin and she was also a project manager. So there were a lot of companies that could use her skills. So having selected your company as a result of your dominant position in the market or other reason, in this case, there were other reasons that she used for each one of the companies, just a few minutes of your time. If I'm granted this request, I'm confident you'll find it to be productive. She attached a resume, all of it US mail, and had, like I said, had 3 offers. One of the other outreach mantras is this: become the person who would attract the results that you seek. Okay, now I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I've gone into outreach, and now I'm going to go into what I would call the annoyance factor related to anything that's going on with your career or your professional life. I've had several of these moments in my life, and I will tell you a couple of them here in a minute. When is the time when you said to yourself, enough is enough? I am not doing this anymore. It may have been on a job where you had a boss yell at you for the 3rd day in a row. It may have been a situation where you had worked for 3 weeks or 3 months or even sometimes 3 years on a project that was going nowhere, and you basically said, I've had enough of this. My situation was I finished up a consulting project a week before the financial crisis in 2008. I was working at Johnson & Johnson on the launch of a new product called Zyrtec, an allergy product. And after I had done the work that I needed to, I said, wow, I'm going to have a week's vacation. First time in I don't know how long with the kids. We're going to go. And that's what we did. And then I heard about the financial crisis going on, but I said, no big deal. I mean, I saw it on TV. And then I came back, and for the next year and a half, there wasn't anything that I could find. I was applying for and interviewing for consulting positions at a third the rate that I had had before the financial crisis. Couldn't get them. Full-time positions. I joined forces with several other people. We put consortiums. We made proposals all up and down North Jersey and into New York City. It was the worst desert time in my life. And I said, I am never going to let anybody else experience this ever again if I can help it. And that's one of the reasons I do this work. And there were several other enough is enough moments, but I'll just give you that one. So one of your other homework assignments tonight is going to be say, okay, what's my enough is enough moment for me? And how does that become a motivator for what I want to do going forward? So if you want to talk about that directly, you can set an appointment with me on my Calendly link. You can scan the QR code and do that. Scott and I are already going to have a conversation tomorrow related to his situation in more detail. And happy to speak with any of you. And this will obviously be on a replay too, so I'll send this to those who weren't here tonight. Let's talk about what your situation is and what we can do about it. and I'm only in day 3. I mean, there are 2 more days to go, but if you want to set up a time to call, next week would be better. Just because between now and Saturday, I'm going to be pretty booked up, but happy to speak with you about any of the details as they apply to you, going forward. Okay, so here is your homework for this evening. And you can take a screenshot of this if you'd like. And I will put it into the email that goes out. I did not do that last night. I need to slap my hand, but I was getting ready to make the migration here, and I got tied up last night, didn't finish it. A list of 25 or more people who can be instrumental in your job search. And these are summaries of the types of people that qualify. Okay. And Lauren, you may or may not you may be looking at this and saying, I'm not sure who that would be. Your father is a good one. Okay. Just because I know him and I know how many people he knows, he is a good resource for this. But we're not ready to have that conversation with him yet, because we need to make sure that we know what your direction and your resume, certainly the top 2 or 3 inches of your resume, what does that say about what you want to be doing next? Okay. At the point where you're ready with that, these 25 people are going to be really valuable. Okay. Any questions? Anybody? Thoughts? Anything coming up as we were going through all this? Experiences, which would be really helpful as well.
Well, I did have a question. I was thinking about, me as an author for the last 10 years. I put that at the top of my resume because it's the most current thing I've been doing. But should I have put my last teaching role at the top, considering I'm really pitching this out to be a teacher again?
The answer is yes. From a priority standpoint, there are 2 ways to go about it. One is reverse chronological order, and one is, relevant education experience and other experience. Okay. And I'm going to have a look again, and before we talk tomorrow morning, I'm going to have to look again about what it is that you're sequencing, and how does that make a difference in terms of how the interpretation is. The other thing is this: there are people that I've worked with who have 3 resumes, and the biggest difference in their resumes is what the titles are at the top, some of the skill sets, most of the things below professional experience are consistent. I mean, your accomplishments and what you did to contribute are pretty much the same no matter where you were. You may resequence them like we were just saying, but I do have people that qualified to have 3 resumes. My recommendation with clients that I'm working with is, let's put a stake in the ground in one area first, and then we'll figure out how to adjust from there and make the other 2.
Okay.
LinkedIn allows you much more leeway to put 3, 4, 8 things at the top, right under your name. So you can put all of that, I'm making it up, but let's just say, education, history teaching, author, podcaster, doing it. You can say all of that, historical, but I mean, I have to think more about the exact words that would go there, but LinkedIn allows you to do much more than a resume does.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Lauren, Imani, Doris? Yeah, go ahead.
So I meant to mention this earlier. I did do the 16 personality quiz earlier today, and I found it helpful.
Okay. What did your 4 letters and then after the hyphen come out to be?
ESTJ/A.
Okay. And is that the, hold on a second, is that the protagonist or this executive? Okay. There you go. So buried deep inside you has been this executive for years and years that you may not have acknowledged. Okay. And this is one of the things that, as we go through and sift through all the pieces of what makes up Doris or any of you, creating that story in the form of a resume and LinkedIn profile that you can back up is really, really important. But I'm assuming, how much of this did you read, by the way? Because it's a really long report.
I didn't read the report, but I was interested in the types of jobs that they suggested.
Which were or are?
Operations manager, police officer. I
Ooh,
mean, yeah,
okay, okay.
good
Anything else?
variety.
Okay,
I can't remember them off the top of
that's
my
okay.
head.
That's okay. But again, you bringing that piece of information about you is really important. Okay, and several other exercises in my book that add alongside this is the mini Myers-Briggs and creates a mosaic of what you really are, and then how do you communicate your value proposition because of things like that. So if somebody says, well, why are you looking to become a blank? And I'm not saying you're going to be a police officer, but if it did come up, you would say, because you know what? I did a personality assessment and I realized that I fit in a lot of the areas that police officers align with. And so I decided to look into it. I got my credentials and here I am. Right. Very common in terms of people who are making career shifts. Okay. Imani, it looks like you're about to ask or say something I don't know, but
No, I'm just listening. I'm just
okay.
listening.
Hey, Lauren, any thoughts? I know you're kind of getting a full day of this since we only spoke for the first time earlier today. What any thoughts as to what you're seeing?
No, based on the video from the first day and this, just getting lots of ideas. Going into education, I don't have a LinkedIn profile. That wasn't really
Okay.
something that we created in college for education. So, definitely need to get on that and just think about, the networking and using people that I know. Yeah.
Okay. So, and I'm gonna prompt you to tell everybody your GPA out of college.
3.9.
Yeah, those were numbers I never saw. Let's just leave it at that. So good for you. Good for you.
Thanks.
Um, okay, now I have a something that I found, and I believe it's legitimate. And this was several years ago when I found this. It still to this day cracks me up. I don't know if you can read this or not, so I'm going to read it out loud. It has a UK flavor to it, so I'll just go with this. Application for employment. This is a handwritten letter that came along with the resume, and it goes like this. I refer to the recent death of the technical manager at your company and hereby apply for the replacement of this deceased manager. Each time I apply for a job, I get a reply that there is no vacancy. But in this case, I have caught you red-handed, and you have no excuse because I even attended the funeral to be sure that he was truly dead and buried before applying. Attached to my letter is a copy of my CV and his death certificate. I'm not suggesting that you use tactics or strategies like this, but anything else short of this is fair game. Okay, is fair game. All right. So we'll leave it at that for tonight, and I will see you tomorrow from a different venue at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central. Any questions or thoughts in the meantime? The homework assignment tonight is pretty straightforward, 10 to 25 people. And what I'm going to ask you to do, and this is more for you than me, the name of the person, how you know them, what their professional title or what is their area of expertise, and then how would you reach out to them, phone or email, or on you're connected on Facebook, whatever. How would you reach out to that person in order to have the conversation like we were talking about earlier? Okay, and I find this to be easier to do, but if you use like an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet or Google table or Word table, whatever, it'll allow you to, you can handwrite it too, but if you have it on a electronic document, I find it's easier to update, and it's also easier to access further if you need to, and just add information as you're going along. Okay,
What's the
Okay.
migration that you've referred to a few times?
going from Texas to the Northeast
Oh,
for
okay.
the summer. Yeah, for the summer, and I'd like to say we're snowbirds, but not quite. We'll be in New Jersey for about a week, starting the 24th till at least the 1st of July, maybe as late as the 4th. I'm not sure yet. And then further up into Massachusetts, and eventually, my wife has a cabin in upstate Vermont, which is the ultimate destination. But I'm not allowed until she gets there, and she's not going. She's not going just yet. Usually we're there by now, but not this year.
Safe
Okay.
travels.
Thanks. No, it's kind of fun actually to stop and see friends that I would never see otherwise unless I did something like this. So my best friend from grad school, I'm going to see him tomorrow, and another colleague in the morning, and then another coach I'm working with in St. Louis, and that'll be on Friday. And we'll go from there. P.S. I realize that I'm going to have to move Friday, and I'll tell this to everybody in an email. I'm going to have to move Friday to Monday. So day 5 is not going to be Friday night. It will be Monday night, the 23rd.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm verbalizing that now, but I will send that in an email out to everybody as well. Okay.
All right.
All right. Peace out. Have a great night, everybody.
Peace out,
All right. You
guys.
too. Thanks, Bill.
Okay.
See you
Take
tomorrow.
care. Right
Okay.
out. Bye
Bye.
now.